Joanna, Orlando, winning an Oscar, I guess, is a pretty big thing. Even though I met some guys backstage who said that there are other prizes you can win.
We can trade if you like.
An Academy Award, I guess, is sort of similar to being the world champion. And that means that you should be the world champion of documenting the truth. But whose truth is it that you're actually documenting in a documentary like this?
I mean, I think it really depends. You know, documentary as a whole has gone from strength to strength in recent times, and partly because of, you know, confusion or weakness in traditional journalism. I think there are many documentarians out there that really focus on the tenets of journalism and telling a deeper truth than we've been used to. But those are not always necessarily just facts. Sometimes that's emotional, sometimes that's historical. And documentary has a very particular form of truth-telling.
But do you think is it your truth, or is it the truth of White Helmets, or?
Well, maybe just to build on what Joanna said, the kind of truth that we're interested in telling are twofold. It's what we would call an emotional truth or an essential truth, and then on the other hand, a journalistic truth. What we're not interested in talking about is a literal truth. Now, a literal truth in filmmaking form might be a shot of Mr. Smith, a man walking onto a train. Now, but what we're interested in is the essential truth, which would be that Mr. Smith is actually walking onto that train because he's having an affair with his best friend's wife. That's at the heart of documentary. It's about understanding human behaviours and getting at a deeper truth. But running alongside that is what is very much part of our work, is also grounding this emotional and essential truth in journalistic truths, which are built on a discipline of verifying facts from multiple sources. So on the one hand, we're storytellers, but we're also very much journalists.
Is it difficult to balance that, or do you find it easy for you to find the right sort of storytelling part of it and the fact part?
Of course it's difficult. Nothing that was ever worth it was easy. But I think that we choose to tell the stories of the unheard or those who are under attack, and in some way balance out then the narratives that are happening these days. I mean, we've talked a lot this morning about those who hold the power and may lie, and part of our work is how do we redress the balance there for those voices who don't have that power and may have truth that is not being heard.
Is it difficult to know which voices to listen to and not?
Always, but you know, that's where we sit in the tenets of journalism to make sure that we are fact-checking and doing our homework properly. You have to make sure that when you are, especially if you are representing those who are underrepresented, that you are doing it properly, that you cannot be just solely swayed by the emotion of their story. Although, you know, an individual's emotional pathway is still a real truth, even if theirs is not representative of everybody's truth.
All right, and how do you go about when you decide both which stories and hence which truth that you want to tell?
I mean, you know, I think that the truth is, well, I mean, maybe I can talk about what we're drawn to. We're drawn to stories which inspire us. We're drawn to stories often of people who have decided to put their head above the parapet and do something different and risk their lives. And in the case of the White Helmets, this was a group of men and women who had decided not to flee Syria, had decided not to pick up a gun, and had decided every day to go out and risk their lives to save others. And we felt that was, in this case, was a story that could engage people in the Syria crisis. So that's what we're driven by. They're the stories which inspire us. But then, of course, we have to, when we start to investigate that story and we start to make it, we are grounded and confined by the journalism, and everything we do is set against that integrity.
So I read somewhere that you, Joanna, actually call yourself an activist. I guess an activist for good causes. But how do you balance that? If you're an activist, then you really want to achieve change.
I mean, I think most filmmakers, storytellers, even journalists, understand that they come to a conclusion at the end. Perhaps no different to a scientist. You have to base it in the facts, but at the end, you then have a professional opinion about what is happening. Now, it's no different for me. That means that, when we go into Syria and we look at the white helmets, we will obviously read all of the stories and hear the narrative from the Syrian government that the white helmets are not real, that no civilians are killed there, that actually, everything, all is well in Syria. Now, we have to go and fact-check that against the stories that we're hearing from the white helmets and others, and then make an opinion. And once you make that opinion, then you feel very strongly that you have to back that and you have to push it out into the world. If that makes me an activist, then yes, I am.
Was it obvious for you to choose film as your language?
It's a very powerful medium, and one that gets to many, many people. And again, when we're talking about the rebalancing of asymmetric power, you have to use the tools that are in your armory to do that, and film is a very powerful way of doing that.
Maybe just to follow up on that, just very briefly, Dr. Gross at the beginning of this was talking about science having a battle against liars. I would say that one thing science needs to think about is how to tell stories better, perhaps, to fight that, because there are amazing stories grounded in science, and then I think if you can find the right people and characters and use film as a medium, you have a grounding for beating the false truths.
Alice, you have a pretty uncommon background, I would say, for being a politician, and I think and hope that you would be proud if I would call you an activist. Why did you choose the political path to get as your way of changing the world or improving the world?
Well, I think activists comes in many different forms, and for me, being an activist in the fair trade movement and in Save the Children and human rights organizations, I came to the conclusion that I also wanted to take holistic responsibility. And Sweden is a parliamentary democracy, which is a great, it's a great opportunity for all of us to really want to change the society. And I felt that I had to go from having this one issue focus to really see how can I make real society change holistically. So that's why I chose to be a politician.
Was it the right decision?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes. I mean, we need to be, all of us social changers, we need to be everywhere. We need to be in civil society and organization, but we also need people in politics, in our parliamentary systems. And that's one of our biggest challenges for us from the politics, to make sure that people want to be part of this holistic responsibility too.
I think you just said that politicians are lying, and that is one of the reasons why. You didn't say all, but you said that politicians are lying.
Politicians are lying.
Politicians are lying. No. But that of course, is part of the, call it the balance, or call it the energy between, you could call it media, journalism, and politicians. But on the same time, you are very dependent upon each other. They are the people that you are sort of documenting, but you are also dependent upon the politicians when it comes to creating an infrastructure for making this possible. How do you look upon this?
I mean, look, when society is healthy, the media and parliaments exist in a good way. The oxygen is well flowing, politicians are telling the truth, the media documents that in a correct way that's unbiased, and that's how the public, creates a mandate for the politicians to continue or to choose which policies they understand. Now, that's when it's healthy. We're in a current situation where things aren't healthy, and we have situations like what's happening in the US, we have what's happening in the UK with Brexit. The British public were told a series of lies about Brexit and subsequently voted to leave Europe.
It must be fantastic for journalists and for documentary filmmakers. I mean, the material you have there.
Well, yes, and I very much, we're not covering that issue, but I very much hope there's a documentarian that is, because there is a responsibility for the media to point out when that system is not healthy, and when the politicians are not speaking to the public, with truth, and it's absolutely our role. Now the question is, how do we do that in a diminishing world for journalists? Newspapers are diminishing. The actual reality of becoming a journalist and sustaining a job as a journalist is very difficult as well, which is partly why documentary is one answer, especially when most people's information is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. Documentary gets longer and longer and longer to find truth.
Alice?
No, exactly, and I think that for me as a Minister for Culture and Democracy, one of my, the greatest responsibility I have is to create preconditions for you to scrutinize me. For all of us that love democracy, we must love and respect journalists that says that we are liars.
Yeah.
Because that's the best critical door for making democracy strong and vibrant.
And how do you create those preconditions?
I mean, by having working on the finance situation, the threat against journalists, make sure that we have a rule of law that really protects journalists, and so on and so forth. There are a lot of things we need to do, even in Sweden, to be able to protect our journalists, so they can be this democracy guard.
How would you value the situation in Sweden now? You spoke about oxygen. Is it enough oxygen in the air in Sweden at the moment?
I think no. I think that we, of course, I mean, you can see differences between different parts of the world and different countries, but I'm worried about the oxygen in Sweden. And but I have so much hope in journalism. I'm following the journalist internal discussions very closely, where I see that you have yourself regularly, how you discuss what you do between colleagues, and I think that's so important, and that you have this system of really being professional journalists, that when you also scrutinize yourself. Right now in Sweden we have a very interesting debate between different newspapers and journalists on what they do and what choices they make when it comes, for example, putting name and faces on people that some people say everybody know who is it, but they haven't been in front of the law and so on and so forth. So, well, I think we need more oxygen, and we need to really have this debate in public.
Short final question. You mentioned that documentaries may become even more important when you see what is happening in the media society. Would you like to elaborate on that? And it would be interesting to hear Alice's comment on that as well. Is documentary going to save us when the traditional medias are going down?
I don't know if documentary is going to save us, but I think, to build on what Joanna said, it's a very useful platform to you know, journalism is not heading in the with a lack of, sorry, let me start again, with the way lack of funding for newspapers, documentary allows long-form journalism to flourish. And right now, with platforms like Netflix, we have a fantastic flourishing of documentary, and so I think it's a really great time for the platform to help hold power to account.
Alice, more money to documentaries?
More money, yes.
More oxygen,
I'm making sure that documentary in Sweden, in a way, are getting more money. But I think that documentary as an art form also is important when it comes to giving us, the people, more perspectives, more views. I mean, the picture as a tool is very strong in telling stories and telling other people's stories. So we need more documentaries in our lives.
More documentaries in our lives. Alice Kuhnke, Orlando from Einsiedel, Joanna, Natasegara. Thank you so much for this conversation.